Welcome back to another episode of the Adventure Box Podcast. This is Zach Edwards with Historical Conquest, and we are here to talk to you about something that's actually quite amazing. So, it's not in your curriculum. It will be in the next edition. I apologize. I might just set out a supplement when it comes to this, but it's never really talked about that much. But it really should be. Now, I was going to go on and talk to you about South American natives. But I just found out about a tribe that's legendary down in South America. But they don't talk about it much in the United States. I don't know why, especially because of all they've been able to accomplish. So let me have you picture this. You have the Incas. You have the Spanish. You have the Argentine and the Chilean countries. And you have a tribe that has survived throughout the whole thing, never been able to be conquered or taken over. This group is called the Mapuche. The Mapuche is a tribe that's been around since, I think it was 60 or 80 BC. This group has been around through thick and thin. It's been through all the different transitions in history. And yet, why don't we talk about them in America, in North America? That's something I'm going to uncover for you right now. So the Mapuche, Mapuche. I'm going to show you a little bit of the map of the world. Okay, so again, the map. We are up in the United States. If you go down through Mexico, Guatemala, Nicaragua, down through Colombia, through what used to be the Inca Empire, down past Brazil, past Chile, and into Argentina, you would actually come upon a tribe that's called the Mapuche. Now, this is a civilization. I should change that. It's not a tribe. It's a civilization because it's built up of a lot of different tribes. But remember what I talked to you about, actually I've been talking to you about the whole month, is how most of the tribes, most of the organizations around North America and South America, the cultures broke off into different families. So this was actually part of the, if you remember back when we first started talking about coming over the Bering Straits, there was the Clovis people. And there was the pre-Clovis people. But the Clovis people supposedly came through down Mexico and down into South America. Is it actually true? Not sure. It's still a theory. But the traveling all the way down into South America and then the furthest tip south. So supposedly this is it. But new DNA evidence has come about that there might be more to the story than that. So there's a great article I can put into our comments or under our post, and you can read more about it. But the Mapuche was an amazing people. And again, it wasn't 60 or 80, it was 600 BC. So they developed around 600 BC. Okay, so remember, the Maya were up to 100 BC. You had the Olmecs before that. So if they were to have come down from Alaska and down through North America and down through Central, they probably had people that broke off from them and started up places like the Olmecs. But again, the DNA says differently, though this is newer technology in DNA, so they're still trying to figure out what it means. Because again, the DNA in South America ties back to Middle East, Israel, those type of areas. Now, going into the Mapuche are again very far down south in Argentina and Chile. You had in Peru, just above Chile, you had the Inca Empire. Now, the Incas were a very centralized group. It was a centralized government. One government in a capital that controlled all these other tribes that were in the area. But now go down to the Mapuche, there was no centralized government. all of their individual tribes lived independent of each other. And because they lived independent of each other, no one ruled over each other. They lived together, and in times that they were actually being attacked or there was some sort of opposition to them, they would join up. They would team up together to fight that opposition. So for instance, there is actually tales that the Incas came down through Peru, down into Chile, because they were expanding. They were in Bolivia, Ecuador, Colombia, part of Chile. But when they came to the Mapuche came together and fought off the strikes or the attacks of the Incas. So they were one to be able to hold off on one of the main civilizations at that point. But still, they did not join as a confederacy or even as a empire, much like the Incas did, or a confederacy like the Iroquois did. They joined together only in times when other people were attacking them or showing any kind of opposition that might destroy their culture and their people. So we have these two great civilizations. But interesting enough, if you look at an image or a map, actually I've got a map here, you won't be able to see it if you're on the podcast, but if you look at this map, these are the different tribes that are in Brazil. There are hundreds. There's even possibly near 1,000 different tribes. And then the Mapuche nation was down in the south. Argentina, Chile. Up here you have the Inca Empire. And there are a lot of tribes all clustered together. Look at that. Look how many tribes are all clustered together. Literally hundreds within Colombia, Peru, the west side of Brazil. And the Mapuche, you come down lower, they're all spread out. They have all these different groups that are all spread out among themselves. Now, the reason why they're very interesting to understand is unlike those in the Incas, they were not centralized. With it not being centralized, it wasn't really an empire that you could take over. So, for instance, Francisco Pizarro, he came down from Mexico. You'll learn about this later on when we talk about the Age of Exploration. But he comes down from Mexico and takes over who? The Incas. Now, when the Spanish try to come down, and even the Portuguese try to come down into Argentina to take over, they can't. They're held off by the Mapuche. They were very strong people. I actually have some pictures I wanted to show you when it comes to the Mapuche. And so, and again, if you're not watching the YouTube, it's okay. You don't have to. But some of the tribes, you had people like this, warriors like this. You also had, and that's in time of battles, and that was of the northern Mapuche area. Well, you also had people that were in lower areas that would look like this, very well covered up. While the warriors that I just showed you didn't have them much with comes to clothing from the waist up. But those, the other ones that I'm showing, actually have very heavy clothing because it was very cold down south in Argentina. As farther you get up north, the warmer it will get. Much like in the United States, the northern area is very cold, and as you come down into the south, you get into warmer climates. Same thing here. So each of the Mapuche were very diverse because it depended on what area that they lived in, whether they lived in the mountains, whether they lived in the valleys, whether they lived in the coast, or whether they lived in the inlands. They were always different depending on where they lived. But what brought them all together was a faith, a family culture. It was much like when I was talking about the Arctic culture or the Northwest coastal culture or the Adena and Hopewell culture. Well, the Mapuche didn't really get outside of a culture. They stayed in a culture, which means they had all these decentralized tribes and groups that were all part of the Mapuche nation. So they were almost like a confederacy, except that they were a confederacy before, and they didn't have to actually create a confederacy like the Iroquois did with the other tribes in the area. These stayed as a culture and stayed together. So this is one of the most interesting things. And I was asked, why am I not focusing on that? And so I will probably be adding it to the curriculum because they are a fascinating group, especially when it comes to what was happening. You had, again, the Incas trying to take them over around 1400 AD. Then you had the Spanish trying to take them over around 15 to 1600 AD. And then the 1800s to 1900s and even up to today, you had the Chilean and the Argentine governments trying to take them over. But here's the thing. The Mapuches are still fighting. They're still there. How is that they are still so powerful as a speaking voice? Even though, as we saw from the image yesterday, and actually I can bring this up, the image yesterday basically showed where the amount of where the tribes were when it came to South America. So, okay, you look at this. I've got another map in here. And if you see Bolivia, it's very black, which means it's greater than 50% indigenous people. You come down to the Argentina and Chilean area, and it's going around the, let's see, probably around the 6 to 20% indigenous people. The rest are non-indigenous. So mixture of Spanish, Portuguese, and all those that settled there from all around the world afterwards. So the Mapuche were in Argentina and Chile, and were able to have a culture there all by themselves for a long time because they kept fighting off their opposition. And they would stay in places, or sorry, houses, much like this that I'm about to show you. Very much straw and hay. These are the types of huts that they lived in. Now remember, the Mapuche being down south in South America, which is like the opposite here. It's northern, that's really cold. Down here in the south, you actually have a very cold climate. So think about all this straw. Why in the world would they keep it so thick? Because it's so stinking cold down there. And they'd have a hole at the top, which will allow the smoke to come up through the top of their huts. So this is what's so great about their placement in the world, in South America. They picked the right climate for their areas. They adapted to it. And like I've been telling you for a while, everything that they did, all their advancements were based on survival, not based on like entertainment like we have. We have social media, entertainment. Yes, it communicates. It's entertainment. YouTube, entertainment. What are some other things that we have? Certain toys, certain game systems. All these different things. They're all based on technology that we developed for our entertainment. They developed things not for their entertainment, but mostly for their survival. Whether it came to their physical survival, their mental survival, their spiritual survival, and so forth. So everything that they did was so pointed towards them surviving, whether it's in the climate or from the other tribes that came over. So right now, they have had a 500-year war against intruders into their area, starting from the Incas, going to the Spanish, now going to the governments, and they are still fighting for their land. So this is really interesting because, like in North America, most of the Native American tribes, they either worked with the U.S. government and were able to keep some of their lands in their original lands, or the U.S. government pushed them out into places like Oklahoma and Missouri and some of the southern central areas of the United States. The Mapuche are still spread out throughout this area. They still claim their ancestral lands in some places. The Argentinian government and also the Chilean government have taken them over, but never really have they been conquered. They are still there. They are still in place. and they are still maybe not thriving compared to other places and other people, but in their own culture, they are thriving because they're able to keep their culture. They're able to keep their religion and their understanding of the things around them. And that's what's most important to them, is to be able to understand, to live in a place that they can call home and live with their families and keep their religion and understanding. Now, here's something interesting. I just mentioned religion. Mapuches are very interesting. So I was just listening to one of their creation story. The creation story talked about a single God. Now, that single God had two sons. And the two sons were, according to the legend, again, which was pushed down through the times, these two sons wanted to take over the earth. And the father, God, he did not like that. So he basically pushed them out of heaven. They fell down to earth and made huge indents in the ground when they landed. These are actually, I'm going to show you these. The legend is, those are the lakes that were caused by the two suns falling. Say, Laguna Mia Chiquita and Logo Salina de Embergotos. Gasto. Sorry, I really butchered that. I always do. I should have practiced that before. But these are the lakes that were basically created by the bodies of the two sons being pushed out of heaven. It's interesting because all Native American, being South America, North America, they all have legends of creation. Most of the time, they have a single God that created different parts of life, different aspects of life. So this one is a very interesting one because this has been carried down through the generations. Again, never being conquered. These people have not been conquered. And so because they have never been conquered, per se, they have been able to pass down their religions and faith and understanding of their culture. Unlike everywhere else, where the Spanish took over and then burned the codexes, the writings. Well, Mapuche did not have writings like everyone else. Not until they were taught by actually the Spanish, and then over time they developed their own language that they were able to write down and keep their oral history. So the Mapuches, hat tip to you. You are great people for being able to hold off against, again, the Incas, the Spanish, the Chilean and Argentinian countries. Sorry to say, they are very powerful in those areas. The Chilean and Argentinian governments, they are actual nations. But with that, they are finding ways of working together inside that. Now, they still have protests, major vandalism, all different types of riots, trying to keep their ancestral lands. It's almost like the United States back when we were in the 1700s, where we were taking away the land, and the 1800s when we were taking over the land. But this is modern times, and the Chilean and the Argentinian governments are still trying to take over the ancestral lands of the Mapuche. So this is why the Mapuche need to be talked about a little bit more. I never really knew about the Mapuche because I was never taught this in high school. So please, when you come to this chapter, this section of the curriculum, you get to choose. You want to do a study on the Caribbean tribes? Do you want to do it on the Incas? Incas have a lot of information. The Caribbean tribes have a very good amount of information because that's where the Europeans first came. But some of the cultures are completely wiped out that were there. Or do you want to do the Mapuche? Again, it's not written in the curriculum, but do your own research. There's a good amount of research out there that you can read about them. And again, I will add it. And if you'd like it, I will send you a copy of that so that you can have it as part of the curriculum. There's one other thing I want to show you that is also very important with this area. Now, oh no, I got rid of that picture. What I wanted to show you is that in modern maps, they actually show the Carib tribe still in the Venezuela and this area of northern South America. Now, as I told you yesterday, the Caribs actually traveled north through the islands of the lower Antilles Islands up into Puerto Rico, where they met up with who? The Taino people. The Taino were the people that Columbus was the first to I'm not going to say discover, because he didn't exactly discover anything, because it was already discovered, but he met them. He was the first Europeans to discover them or to meet them. And so when they came here, when the Columbus came here, on his second voyage, when he came back to the island, he actually found out that the Caribs had attacked the Taino and had taken a lot of their people hostage and for slaves and for other things and abuses, possibly even cannibalism. And so Columbus sent out an expedition to rescue the women and the children and those that were still alive that the Carib had actually taken. So this is also very interesting. Now, if you remember, I just showed you the map. In this map up here, it shows you all the different tribes that are in this area. Again, hundreds, even nearing 1,000 different tribes in South America, all different and yet all coming from the same culture when they first started. You have the Arawak, which the Arawaks also came up north. You have the Carib. You have a lot of other ones all throughout this area. So stay tuned for more information. I'm going to bring you some more information tomorrow in this Adventure Box podcast. This is very fascinating things, very fascinating information that, again, I never knew about. So I'm still doing more research on it, and I'll get back to you with more of that information tomorrow when I talk to you. Thank you so much for being with us. Please, if you would, subscribe to the YouTube channel or subscribe to the to our podcast so that we can get more followers. The more subscribers that we have, the more listeners we have, or listening audiences, so the more times our podcasts are listened to, the more people we will have hearing our conversations that will be able to join as well. So we will be able to grow bigger, and I will be able to get more help when it comes to this podcast so that I can give you more professional productions. As of right now, this is me. I'm the only one doing this, so I do appreciate your patience with my presentation. It will be better, and I'm going to be getting better as we go. So thank you so much for joining us. Can't wait for next time. And guess what? We are nearing the end. Tomorrow's going to be our last episode for Ancient America. Next week, we will be going to Africa if you're doing ancient civilizations. And if you're doing North America or American history, we're going to be doing that starting with the Age of Exploration. So the Age of Exploration, very fascinating. There's so much information there. You're not guessing a lot. There's less theory and more fact, because there's actual journals, there's actual writings, and there's actually eyewitnesses that saw the whole thing. So I can't wait to share you that, and we will talk to you next time. Thank you so much for joining us. Take care. Bye.
have any comments or questions, add them to the comments below. Otherwise, we'll see you tomorrow actually. Take care. Bye.